Good morning. I'm just I forgot to run upstairs and get the clicker for the slides, so just trying to sort that one out. Well, happy or not so happy Good Friday to everybody. It was on mute again.
It wasn't.
It's these Browns. We've got to learn, haven't we? All right. Yes, thanks, Bernie. Give me room. Haven't worn one of these things before, so lots of new things happening today. So, Good Friday can be a very reflective time and sometimes a bit heavy. I pray that it won't be today, but that you'll be really encouraged. So the title today, as you can see, is The Cost of the Cross. That's one title that I've got there, but children, I need your help today. I've got a challenge for you. There's another title I was thinking of having for the message, and I'm going to give clues all the way through, so you need to be ready, because at the end I'm going to ask you what the other title would have been. Okay? So have your ears turned on. So when I was the age of some of you, I grew up in the church. I heard all the time about Jesus dying on the cross. And somehow I had this idea in my mind that because Jesus was the Son of God, that it didn't hurt him when he hung on the cross because he was the Son of God. And that he just hung there and he just happened to die. It wasn't that the cross actually killed him. And I thought, I knew the story had a happy ending, so I didn't really think very much about what he went through until I got older. And when I came to understand that Jesus was a real man, it really hit me a bit, and it's continued to grow, of what he went through, that he felt everything just the way we would. Thank you. All right, I have been known to hold these upside down before, so see how we go. So crucifixion wasn't just, that word didn't actually mean just the cross. It was a whole process, and it was designed to cause maximum suffering for the person being crucified. They wanted them to die a long, slow, painful death, and it was saved only for the very worst criminals. The Romans used it to make an example of people. So the crosses were put in a very public place where everyone could see them and watch these people dying. And it was the Romans' way of saying, don't you behave badly or you'll end up here. It was a way of controlling people through fear. So like I said, it was saved for the worst criminals, people like Barabbas, who was a man at that time who was a murderer and a rebel. And yet Jesus was crucified. But he wasn't a criminal. Acts 10:38 said Jesus went around doing good and healing all who were under the power of the devil. So Jesus went around doing good. Children, can you tell me some of the good things that you know that Jesus did? Yep?
He healed people.
Yeah, he healed people, especially people that were rejected by others, like the woman who was bleeding and the man that had leprosy. What else? Yep. He did. He fed a big crowd of people with hardly any food. And he did that 2 times. Amazing. Up the back there? Yeah, he did. And that's what we're focusing on today. And he told... Adeline. He cast out demons. He did, yeah. He did lots of miracles to help people. So when a wedding ran out of wine, he changed water into wine. He walked across the water to get to his disciples in a storm and then calmed the sea as well. He did amazing things, lots and lots of good things. And he also challenged the proud, bossy religious leaders. None of these things were a crime. Jesus didn't deserve to die this way, but he knew God had a purpose. Has anyone seen the movie Freaky Friday? Some of our era have. It's an old movie. Well, not that old, but old to some. It's about a mum and a teenage daughter who end up in each other's bodies for a day. And they have to do everything that the other one would normally do. So the mum had to go to school and play in this band, play a guitar that she'd never played before. And the daughter had to do all these grown-up things. It was a really weird feeling for them, really freaky, but they also, through that, grew in understanding of what life was like for each other. And they were very thankful to be back in their own bodies, but when they were, they understood each other a whole lot better. And we sometimes call that identifying with someone, where you understand and you feel for them with what they're going through. I want you to imagine spending a day in your mum or dad's body. What would you have to do? You might have to drive a car. You might have to go to work. You might have to pay some bills. What if the car broke down? You might have to fix it. How would that be? It'd be a bit freaky, wouldn't it? Or what about if you spent the whole day in the body of a baby? What if you had to go back to being in a baby's body? You'd have to have your nappy changed, have to maybe be fed a bottle or even breastfed. Whoa, that would be strange. It would be very, very strange, wouldn't it? But when Jesus came, he was God, and he didn't come as God to us. He came as a baby, first in a woman's womb, growing in a woman's womb. And then he was born and he grew into a real boy, just like you boys here. And then he grew into a real man, just like the men here. So what are the sort of normal things that Jesus did that we all do? Children? Yola was king. What are some normal things? What are some normal things that Jesus did that we do as well? Yep. Pardon? He helped his dad. Yeah, he learnt how to be a carpenter from his dad and had to do a job to earn money. What else? Really normal things, everyday things. Yeah, Elijah? He wore regular clothes. Yeah. Well done. And you had one? I don't know everyone's names yet, sorry. Yeah, that wasn't very normal though, was it? So he did things like he got hungry, he ate food, he got tired, and he had to sleep. He didn't float or fly everywhere. He had to walk like everybody else. He probably got sore feet, stubbed his toe. I reckon he might have hit his thumb once or twice with the hammer when he was learning to be a carpenter. And I think he probably also burped and passed wind and even went to the toilet. He was fully human. But when Jesus was crucified, he also fully identified with our suffering. And that's what we're going to focus on today. So he walked in our shoes through the things that we suffer. And we're going to talk today about 6 ways that Jesus did that. Did I go backwards? Oh, is it the next one? There we go. So if you've got your Bibles, I'm not going to read all the scriptures because it's a really long section, but Luke chapter 22 is where I'm going to start referring to. I'll mention different verses as we go through, and you can find those, but I'd really encourage you over this Easter weekend to have a read through all of Luke chapter 22 and 23. There's so much in the story. So the first way Jesus identified with our suffering was in feeling the cost of obedience. So Jesus was in the Garden of Gethsemane. This is in verses 39 to 42 of Luke chapter 22, verses 39 to 42. So Jesus was up on the Mount of Olives in the Garden of Gethsemane, And this was just before he knew he was going to be arrested and taken away. And he was really feeling the stress of what he was about to go through and wrestling with just how difficult it was going to be. So he was saying in verse 42, "Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me, yet not my will, but yours be done." His sorrow was so heavy, he felt like it could kill him, just the sorrow. Matthew 26:38, he said, "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death." Jesus wasn't someone who exaggerated, but it was so extreme what he was feeling. And I was recently chatting with someone I really love, and they were really struggling with the pain of laying down something that God had called them to lay down. And I, having been through that in different ways, I was trying to encourage them from my own journey about how, yes, it's painful, but I've seen God's goodness through that. But they were saying, "I really don't think you can understand what it's like for me. My situation's different to yours." And I was silent for a moment, and I thought, it's true. And then I just felt God plant these words in my mouth, and I just said, "Jesus gets it. Jesus gets it. I may not fully understand, but Jesus does." Jesus said yes to God. In other words, "God, I want what you want more than what I want." And it was so extreme what he was going through that in verse 43 it says, "An angel came and strengthened him." God knew he needed backup, but still he sweated drops of blood. And that only happens when somebody is in such extreme stress that the capillaries near their skin burst. So if you're wrestling and you're feeling overwhelmed with something God is asking of you or has asked of you, I want to tell you this today: Jesus understands. The next way he could relate to our suffering was through going through betrayal and abandonment. Do any of you children know what the word betrayal means? Yeah, Elijah?
Someone says, oh, like, they're your friend, but then, like, they go and do something mean.
Yeah, that's exactly right. When someone's your friend, but then they go and do something mean to you. Yeah. And we know that Judas was one of Jesus' 12 closest friends. He lived with Jesus. He ate with him. He travelled with him. He learnt from him. He was trusted to look after all the money people were giving to help them get food and everything. But then Luke 22, back in verses 3 to 6, says he went to the chief priests and officers and talked to them about how he could hand Jesus over to them at a secret time when there weren't crowds around to stop that. And he wanted money. And then it says in verses 47 and 48 that he led them to Jesus in the garden. Jesus' friend led all these people with swords and clubs, and then he went and kissed Jesus to betray him and say, "This is the guy you need." A kiss was a sign of friendship then at that time, a sign of trust and closeness. But he was using that. It's like going and giving your friend a hug when you're bringing bad guys along to bash them up. It's just not, it's total betrayal. And Jesus went through abandonment. Even before that moment in the garden, he asked his disciples to pray and they all fell asleep. They were so overwhelmed with the sadness of what was going on. So they abandoned him in that time when he was struggling so much. And most of them didn't follow Jesus when he was taken away. Peter did. He was very brave, actually. In verses 54 to 62, it says that he followed at a distance and he sat in a courtyard, but then people started saying, "You were with him." And he was really worried about them doing something to him as well. So he said, "No, I wasn't. I don't know him." 3 times people spoke to him. And every time he said, "I don't know Jesus." And it wasn't long before, in verse 33, he'd said, "Lord, I'm ready to go with you to prison and to death." But he just was overcome by fear. So he abandoned Jesus too. Jesus even went through a difficult time in his relationship with God as part of this crucifixion process. He knew it was going to happen. Maybe that was I reckon that was probably a big part of why he was struggling so much with the cost. If you think about one of the worst things you've ever done, and how bad you felt when you did that, and the weight that it was on you, and then how good and how light you felt when you were forgiven. Jesus took on all of our sin. In 1 Peter 2 verse 24 it says, "He himself bore our sins in his body on the cross." And we feel it in our body, don't we? When we've done something wrong, we feel that weight. And Jesus took on all my sins. The ones that I see as a big deal, the ones that seem smaller maybe, losing my temper or being impatient, being proud. But then there's violence and things like that too. Like I haven't done a lot of that, but and then he's taken on all my sin, all your sin and your sin and your sin and your sin, all of us in the room, all of us in the world at this time, everyone who's been in the world from the beginning and everyone who's still to come. I cannot even fathom what a weight that would have been for him. And he was a man. And he did this so he could be an offering for our sins. And in that time, instead of having that perfect harmony with God, it says in Isaiah 53 verses 4 and 5, he was pierced, he was crushed, and he was wounded for our sin. Jesus understands what it's like to feel like things aren't the way they should be with the people around you. So if you've had a loved one betray you or a friend turn against you, if you've been in a hard time and you feel like your friends have abandoned you, Jesus understands. Third one. Jesus went through accusation and misunderstanding. He didn't come in the form the religious leaders thought the Messiah would come in. They thought there'd be this powerful king who would come and conquer their enemies, the Romans. Jesus was born into a normal family, seemed an ordinary man until his ministry began. Then they got worried. Then they were jealous because everybody liked Jesus and wanted to listen to him instead of them. And they didn't like him showing people the religious leaders' sin and teaching people the truth about how they could know God. So they became angry and they wanted Jesus killed. When Jesus was standing before Pilate, who was the governor of Judea at that time, the religious leaders were there accusing him. They were saying, he says he's the Messiah, but he isn't. He's travelling around stirring up the people. He's rebelling against the government. That's all in Luke 23 verses 2 and 5. And then when he was before Herod, in verse 10, again, the religious leaders were there forcefully accusing Jesus, it says. I can just imagine them getting red in the face and even spitting maybe. They're just so fired up and angrily accusing Jesus of all these things. And then they even influenced the people who had loved Jesus. Just 1 week before, you guys all know about Palm Sunday and the cloaks on the road and the palm branches waving, because that's what they did when they were welcoming a king. In Luke 19:38, they were saying, "Hosanna, blessed is the King," which he was, "who comes in the name of the Lord." But 1 week later, the religious leaders, and I'm sure Satan, had convinced them that Jesus was a troublemaker. In Luke 23, verses 13 to 24, Pilate tried 3 times to tell the people Jesus doesn't deserve death. 3 times. He had all the chief priests, all the rulers, all the people. He said, "This man has done nothing deserving death." But each time he spoke, the people got louder, saying, "Away with him! Crucify him!" Not only did they want Jesus away, but they wanted him to suffer that worst of worst deaths. It just doesn't make sense. And Pilate gave in to them. It must have been like a riot. The people were just yelling and yelling and yelling and yelling, "Crucify him." And so he said, "Okay." And he handed him over to be crucified. So if you've ever had people accuse you of things that you didn't do, or misunderstand why you did something and think the worst of you, Jesus understands. Mockery. When Jesus was in the high priest's house, a man of God's house, supposedly, the religious leaders actually beat him up. They spat on him, they blindfolded him, and they hit him. I won't go into as much detail as I could. But then they were saying, "Prophesy. Who hit you, Messiah? If you're the Messiah, you tell us. If you're blindfolded, but you should know." And they mocked him and they insulted him over and over. Some soldiers put a robe on him as if he was royalty and a crown of thorns and gave him a staff, and they bowed down and pretended to worship him, making fun of him. And then they used the same staff to hit him. And when Jesus was on the cross, Luke 23:35, the Roman rulers were sneering at him. What do you think a sneer is, guys? Now I can see. Very good demonstrations. Hope you don't do that too often. It's the mean smile, like the bad guys in the movies. The soldiers were saying in Luke 23:37, "If you are the king of the Jews, save yourself." It's like they're saying, "Some kind of king you are. Look at you up there dying." The criminal on the cross next to Jesus was throwing insults at him as well. Everyone was ganging up on Jesus. Jesus was the Lord, and he had poured out his life for these people over the previous 3 years. And now they were rejecting him and putting him down like he was a nobody. So if you ever have people make fun of you and put you down, it really hurts. But just remember, Jesus understands. He's been through it too. Number 5, pain. Like I said before, crucifixion was a whole process. It wasn't just the cross. So the flogging was done beforehand so that their back was so wounded so that when they hung on the cross, it would hurt every time they moved to try and breathe. They did that on purpose. If you think about a grazed knee, put up your hand if you had a grazed knee. I got a grazed knee again when I was in my 30s. I was rollerblading and I fell over and I lay there for a minute thinking, oh, it hurts just as much as when I was a child. And if you bump it, it really stings. Or if you have a paper cut and you bump it, it's so painful. And what Jesus' back was like after the flogging would have been like 1,000 times more painful than that. Yeah. So if you're experiencing pain in your body at this time, we'll talk more about that in a little bit, but just know in this moment, if you're feeling pain, Jesus understands. Last one, humiliation. In verses 26 to 34 of Luke 23, it talks about Jesus being led through town with 2 other criminals to the cross. It wasn't the same road he'd gone on when he came on the donkey and everyone was worshipping him. It was another road. It was the road that led to condemnation and death. Verse 34 says the soldiers divided up Jesus' clothes. That means he wasn't wearing them. So people in those days were either naked or almost naked when they were crucified, and then they were hung in this public space for everyone to see. So there he was, the Son of God, the one who had helped create the world that these people were living in, hanging up there, being mocked, suffering as a terrible criminal, and everyone just looking at him. Some of his followers were there, but almost everyone else was against him. The Lord. If you've ever been picked on, if you've ever been left out of the group, no matter what age you are, you can feel small or like a nobody. Jesus understands, because that's how he was treated. So, children, have you figured out the other title? Has anyone picked up a certain phrase that's been coming again and again? Two words I've been saying. Anybody? Pardon? Jesus understands. Yes. And Jesus understands you. Well done. Yes, well done. So Jesus actually had the power and authority to get down from the cross. People were saying, if you're the Messiah, come down. And he could have, but he didn't. Hebrews 12 verse 2 says, for the joy set before him, he endured the cross. He knew there was a happy ending beyond the cross. You'll hear more about that from John on Sunday, I'm sure. If Jesus had pulled out, then we would have missed out on our part in that happy ending, because it wouldn't even have happened. We were part of the joy that he could see ahead. He did everything the Father asked of him. And in John 19 verse 30, as Tinika prayed this morning, just before he died, Jesus said, it is finished. All that suffering was finished for him. He had done the job. And he'd suffered all this as a man so that we can be forgiven, that we don't have to carry all that weight of our own sin. We can live light. And so that we can be welcomed into God's family just as if we had never sinned. How amazing is that? Jesus was the one who never sinned. But we can be welcomed into God's family as if it was us. We know Jesus' death isn't the end of the story. Now he lives in us who believe in him by his Holy Spirit, and he's with all of us all the time. How amazing is that? So when we are suffering, when we are struggling, he walks with us through that with full understanding. He has sympathy for us because of what he has suffered. So when we're suffering in any of these ways that you can see up there, if we feel alone, if we feel unloved or forgotten or unworthy, remember Jesus' sacrifice. His sacrifice says that you were worth dying for. And we can cry out to him. He welcomes us with arms of compassion. He counsels us. Don't we love his counsel? He shows us his way through the struggle. And he heals our hearts. He heals our bodies. He delivers us from evil. And he enables us to do more than we think we can. So when you struggle, remember Good Friday. Remember Jesus' suffering. He understands you. He understands what you're going through. He gets it. And he's with you in it.